This conference will now be recorded.
Well, welcome
All
everybody
right.
to our Renville County HRA EDA Lunch and Learn. We do this on a monthly basis, except for the next 3 months. We're having summer vacation for June, July, and August. But we try to have a different business topic each and every month. And this month, where our topic is business startup basics. And we've got a pro with us to present. We've got Chris with the Small Business Development Center based out of Southwest Minnesota State. She's the associate director there. She's got a strong technical background, having worked as a software developer. She also has experience as a business analyst, providing solutions to business problems. She's also worked in the medical software and retail industries, including numerous areas of business, including tax accounting, accounts payable, procurement, document management, and more. She has a bachelor's degree in mathematics, smart person, from Southwest Minnesota State University in Marshall. She's also the program coordinator for junior achievement in the Lyon County area. She's a conference speaker, group fitness instructor. Hold on to your hats, folks. She is a third degree black belt in Taekwondo, so you do not want to mess with Chris. She's also a certified self defense instructor. So she's here today chatting on behalf of the Small Business Development Center with some of the small business startup basics. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Wow, that sounds like a long list. I sound really ambitious when someone else discusses it. So, yes. Um, so it's great to be here. Like Jordan said, I am the associate director of the Small Business Development Center here in Marshall, which I love my job. I did switch from having a very technical job or technical jobs in the past, but I was always working with business units and enjoyed that part of the job. So this was a natural progression, and it is great to be able to help people and assist them in starting businesses. One of the biggest things I do here is a lot of research. So that has never stopped from the beginning, that problem solving part of my career. So that's great. I'm going to start this by saying that I am not a lawyer or an accountant. So any of the advice I give is from the standpoint of RSBDC and helping people and assisting in starting businesses. If you have questions that need more understanding or um, beyond my expertise, please consult a lawyer or an accountant or give me a shout out and we'll work through the resources together. All right, so I'm going to go and jump right into it. We're going to talk about small businesses. Nationally, there are approximately 28 million small businesses. Three-quarters of them have no employees, so we call those solopreneurs. Um, Small businesses make up 99.9% of US employer firms. They create 63% of new private sector jobs. They employ 48% of private sector workforce, and they make up 90% of the firms exporting goods. So you can see that they're very important to our industry and to keeping the US solvent. So the SBDC here in Southwest Minnesota, this is a little bit of who we are and what we do. We cover the 18 counties and two sovereign nations in Southwest Minnesota. And that means that we're making partnerships with EDAs, people like Jordan, and with chambers and financial institutions. So our consultants know how to work with those businesses, those business support providers. We have partnerships with all of them so that can help with starting a business go more smoothly. And that is why we have certain sectors that the different centers cover. We are confidential, no cost consulting, and we help anything from financial analysis, helping with getting your human resources set up. If you want to do government contracting, we can assist with that. Anything that a small business does, we have a consultant that can assist with it from startup to succession planning. All right, so I like to start with questions just to get you thinking a little bit or get you a little more invested in the discussion. How much does it cost individuals and/or businesses for the SBD services. And a lot of people guess 100 an hour. Some people guess the fee is project-based, but it is no cost to business to clients and individuals, and that is because we are federally, state, and locally funded through our partners. SBDCs are nationwide. We are, like I said, a combination of federal, state, and local resources. We are a resource partner of the SBA. They are part of our funding, and DEED serves as the lead center for us. Definition of a small business for the SBDC when we assist small businesses, that is what the SBA considers a small business. They need to be organized for profit. So our funds don't necessarily assist for nonprofits. We can make a few exceptions to that. So if you have a nonprofit and you are questioning if we can assist you, go ahead and give us a shout out and we'll let you know. There's certain criteria that our funds are able to assist with that. But for the most part, organized for profit, has a place of business in the US, operates primarily within the US, is independently owned and operated, is not dominant in its field on a national basis, and dependent on the industry, the number of employees matters. The average is about 500, but it can be up to 1,500 employees depending on the industry. And again, so the same with the amount of money that it's taking. 15 million is the average, can be up to 40 million. That there is a size standard. If you reach out to me, I can send you a link to these slides, the slide deck, or reach out to Jordan and I'll be in contact with him and give him a link to the slides. And then you could have access to all of these links. But that link is for the size standards for SBA. All right, so goals today. We're going to talk a lot about what to consider when you're starting a small business. Maybe a few things that you haven't thought about, or maybe a few things that you have thought about, but we're going to discuss them maybe in more detail. We're going to talk some steps to start your business, and we're going to go over a lot of resources for you. My first set of things to think about are questions to ask. Are you a self-starter? Are you adaptable? Are you a lifelong learner, well-disciplined, willing to put in long hours, good money manager, determined, willing to make sacrifices, willing to face challenges, and able to sell and promote? Those are just a few of the things that you need to have in your back pocket as an entrepreneur. I talked to an entrepreneur the other day, a small business owner, and I called and it was about 10 after 5. And I said, I'm so sorry, it's after working hours. And she said, I'm a small business owner. There's no such thing. So I had to laugh, but there's also truth to that. Okay, so when you're talking about starting a business, there are a few things to consider with your business idea. You want to make sure you know your why. Why are you doing this? You want to ask, does this offer something not currently available? If it is currently available, can it be competitive based on quality, selection, price, or convenience? And can it serve an existing market in which the demand exceeds the supply? Then we'll talk about some myths. So we get a lot of calls asking for grants. There must be grants available. There are a lot of ads that say there are grants available. There are articles from even places that are dependable like Forbes that say there are grants available. But the fact is there aren't really a lot of grants available and there's not easy money. So there are some grants, the government gives grants, but a lot of the grants the government gives are for places that are already in business or that are very specific. And then there are some businesses and some places that give grants, but you need to be careful about them. Some of them are more about getting your information, more about selling you something. So you want to just be very careful when you're looking at grants, what the grant is, and then what is all entailed in the grant, because a lot of them will take you longer to go through the process than what the grant is actually giving you. I did a bunch of research on this, and I found an article that had 5 grants. It actually had 40 grants for women-owned businesses, but I looked at the top 5. And the first 3 were all ones that you had to pay to be part of the grant to submit. Well, that's not a grant then. That's because you're paying for it. It isn't a grant anymore. You're just hoping that you get that money back, and that so it's really a lottery. And then one of them, all of the grant recipients were in Africa. So that wasn't one that was probably likely that anyone in the US would get. And then the other one had millions of people that submitted to it. So you are one against millions to get one of 5 grants. So just to keep that in mind when you're looking, there aren't a lot of grants. And so we are a business entity. Our services are of no cost because we're a business entity. But I often tell people when a service is no cost, I'm sorry, we're a government entity is what I meant. Other than a government entity or someplace that has funding like that, if you're not paying for the service, you are the product. So keep that in mind when you're filling out these grant forms. We had a client that filled out several and then ended up getting spammed because what had happened was all of their information was sold. So all right, the next myth is you can set your own hours. But the fact is the hours depend on your business and the work that needs to be done. And finally, that you are your own boss. And the fact is that your customers are your boss. So those are things to consider as you're moving into this. Sorry, I thought I had turned that off. All right, so we're going to talk about the steps to starting a business. Our first one is market research. Second is writing that business plan. Third is a funding plan. Fourth is location and naming, but we're going to talk about names all the way through because that's fun. And then we'll talk a little bit about your legal setup and finally that launch. So I said we were going to talk about names all the way through because it's entertaining. I have found a bunch of names, business names, because your business name is very important. But I found some that are kind of fun to look at as we go through. One of them is Pane in the Glass, so kind of a cute name for glass repair. The next one is my boss's favorite because whenever her and her husband are talking about where to go to eat, it's always I don't care. So this would be their favorite place if we had this locally. All right. So we're going to talk about your market for your business. And this is things to consider when you're talking about your market. You're going to want to ask yourself who your target customers are. And then what do they look like? What is their age and gender and income? Because you want to know if they're around you, if you have enough of that customer around you or that will come to you. Where do they live and shop? What are their needs, hobbies, and values? Will you offer a product or service they will use? And then you want to identify your competition. When you're completing a business plan, which section is completed last? And this one's kind of a trick because it's the executive summary. And while that's at the front of the top of your business plan, you finish it last. Sometimes when a financial institution is looking at your business plan to make a decision on whether or not to finance you, this can be the only thing they read. So it's important that it is done well. Here's an example of a business plan. You'll see that it has several different areas of focus. Every business plan might be a little different, but in the end, most of them have very similar information. That executive summary, like I said, is very important. You'll see that I have a few things highlighted. The executive summary, that market analysis, and the financial projections, those are some of the main things we focus on with the FBDC when we work with customers, because that is a lot of times what the financial institutions are looking for. They're also really good options to start because you want to look at that market analysis. Is this business that I want to start, is this going to work for my market? And then you want to get to your financial projections and you want to to know, is this going to be feasible? And then the rest can come after that so that you're not spending time on something that maybe isn't going to work. All right. So why do you write a business plan? A lot of people that I talk to don't have a business plan. They come in, they've been in business a while, and they say, "Why do I need a business plan?" And then we start talking about it, and they see that yes, I do need a business plan, and that might help assist my business be more successful. So your business plan maps your future, it provides a system, it provides insight, and explains your business in detail. So a lot of times business owners have their business plan, but it's in their head, and they need to get it down so that other people can see it and understand it as well. Um, but it also can help you once you get it down and out. It can help you to analyze and maybe do a better job in the future. So we as SBDC, we have a business plan. We analyze it annually. We add things that need to be added. We take away things that aren't working. And it is a great way to assess our business and how we're doing and to better serve our clients. All right, so I'm going to give you a couple of business plan resources. The SBA has a couple out there. SBDC Net has a bunch, and I will show you that in a minute. And SCORE has some out there that are really good. So when I give resources, I usually give resources that are reliable and that are SBA partners or partners of our SBDC. So here is an example of a business plan. When I was showing this to some people, they said, I can't read what's on the side, and it's not necessarily meant to be that you can read exactly this. What I'm just trying to show is that each business plan might have a little bit different structure as you're looking at it, and that's okay. As I was saying, SBDC Net has literally hundreds of business plan templates. Two things to make sure that you consider though is this does take you to third-party vendors. So they might have the template free, but then may sell other products as well. So keep that in mind. But for the most part, it brings you to a template of that sort. And then the second thing to keep in mind is that your business plan should still be your own personal business plan. So make sure you take that template and then make it yours. SCORE really likes to do a one-page business plan. They call it a lean business plan. And so here's an example of a lean business plan. Those are really nice. So while a financial institution may not accept a lean business plan, they might, depending if it's a smaller business, but they may want more than this. But it is a really great place to start, especially if you've never had a business plan before. All right, going to those names again, Amy's Winehouse. And then my favorite, Cheryl's Eat Here and Get Gas. So I thought that was kind of a kick. So back to the trivia, just to get you thinking again, what is the number one expense missed when starting a small business? Employee wages and benefits, permits, license and dues, taxes, or insurance. And the number one that people miss when they're starting a small business, just to keep in those projections, is permits, licenses, and dues. And mainly because they think it's a one and done, and it's not necessarily. Sometimes the licenses need renewing. Sometimes you need to add permits as you go. And they definitely miss dues like chamber dues and association dues and things like that because they think, that they don't need them, or they'll get to that once they're more successful, when sometimes that can actually benefit you from the start. But you should at least keep them in mind for projections. All right, more things to consider. When you're looking at income and costs and working on that cash flow document and your projections, you want to know, how do you make good projections, and think about that. So you want to try to get as much information as you can. I mean, that's your best way to make good projections. What are your production costs? You want to consider that. You want to consider what your sales estimates are going to be. So a lot of that is research, right? What are other people charging for similar things that they're doing? Maybe you're doing consulting. What are other people charging for that? Maybe you're selling a particular item. You want to think about what that your sales estimates are going to be for that. Maybe it's something totally different that no one else has ever sold, but then maybe you can find something in the same realm as that to at least consider what your sales estimates are going to be. You want to gather all those startup costs. If you're in a storefront, what is your rent, or what are you paying for your building? What are you paying for heat and water and all of those things? If you are online, what are you paying for those online costs? What are your monthly expenses? And then in the end, can you make a profit based on all of that? So when we're looking at those finances and the monthly sales estimates, you want to consider your price, you want to consider how many units you're going to be able to sell, what it's going to cost you, and then what you need to purchase your products and services going into that. What are your one-time startup costs? Your equipment, your building or renovation, your down payments, your legal and financial literacy to get ready, and then what are your ongoing costs? Leasing that building, leasing equipment, wages to others, utilities, telephone, all of those supplies. So things to consider for financial literacy. So if you don't know how to do something, you will either be paying someone to do that, or you need to pay to learn to do that, or take the time to learn to do that. You'll need to know what your credit score is. That can play a part in those loans and what your percentages are going into that. Your lender possibilities, seasonal trends. We have a lot of people coming in for food with food trucks, and sometimes that can really be seasonal. Monthly personal income needs. A, a lot of people don't consider that. They don't consider paying themselves when they're looking at the business. Your expansion plans, and then receivables and collections. So that's something that you need to consider if you're doing billing, that there may be a lag of when the product is out there and when you're actually paid for it. So boring business systems, we thought they maybe hit the nail on the head with the name on this one, but we thought, oh, that's kind of a funny name. So, all right. So when you're working on your financial plan, you're going to come up with a cash flow projections and your break-even analysis, so that they kind of work hand in hand, right? You're going to get all of that data together for everything, that all of your overhead costs, all of your costs that are coming up, and get your cash flow projections. And then with that, you should be able to break it down into what you need to sell to break even. And we can do that. We even try to do it monthly, weekly, and maybe even down to the hour. So let's say you want to start a restaurant and you know how much it's going to cost you overall by month. Well, let's break that down and say, okay, so if you break it down and down to the hour, you might find that you need to sell 10 plates at $10 per hour to break even. And then you can ask yourself if that's feasible based on your demographics. We were talking about an example might be, here in Marshall, if someone wanted to start a major airline, right? And you say, I have to sell 100 tickets at $300 a piece, and every hour to be able to break even. Well, that's not going to be real feasible in Marshall, Minnesota. So just that way you can consider based on your demographics if what you're talking about is going to work. And then you're going to also have work into a balance sheet and eventually profit and loss projections. You also want to make sure in your financial plan that you include any assumptions. And there we go. Wasn't going to the next one. All right. So for financial plan resources, we really like the SCORE financial documents. So SCORE is another resource of the SBA. We don't have a SCORE chapter in Southwest Minnesota. They do offer SCORE chapters in like the Twin Cities region. SCORE offers mentors that volunteer their time. They also offer really great training and some really nice documents. So we definitely use them for their free training and for their documents. We don't have them as mentors as much because they don't tend to be in the rural settings that we're in, but we do like their documents a lot. Here is an example of their 12-month cash flow that we use. And you can see here it's laid out really nicely, and it really walks you through exactly how to get that information in. Of course, if you sign up with an SBDC consultant, we will work with you on getting that cash flow document together. All right, so now we're going to walk into some funding sources. So we're going to talk about basically the difference between debt and equity. So debt is a loan. Basically, you're guaranteeing to pay it back. You have that obligation, and it's either at a variable rate over time or at some point in time, and that might be a balloon rate as well. So, and then equity, and that's your investment. So that is you you don't have to repay it, but there's usually some other form of payment. Maybe it's management control, maybe it's a share in the profits, or maybe it's expected residual value when the business is sold or closed. And so basically that is either you're investing your own money and then you have your management control and your share in profits, et cetera. Or if someone else is investing with you, then they may want some of those criteria. All right. So SBA funding information, SBA.gov has their funding programs. They have loans and they can help you find lenders. They have investment capital. They have disaster assistance and they have surety bonds. Just want to note that they do not provide grants, even though on their website there is a spot for grants. But that is not meant for small businesses. That is meant for places that support small businesses. All right. So let's talk about sources of debt. You want to start a small business and you need some financing. Here are some different places where you can go and get some of that financing in the form of debt. And that would be your state, your city or regional EDA, county EDAs, SBA, an online lender, banks and credit unions, and non-bank lenders. We do tend to tell people to be a little more cautious or a lot more cautious when you're working with online lenders. They may not have the same regulations that your banks and credit unions do, and the same with non-bank lenders. And then we're going to talk about some sources for equity or capital. And that would be your savings, your personal credit, some investors, partners, family and friends, sales of some of your assets, your retirement. We don't encourage that, and life insurance. All right. So loan considerations, the 5 C's of credit, the condition and the purpose of the loan, the capacity, which is how you're going to repay the loan, the collateral, and that's your security, what's behind the loan, so that the bank can trust that you will pay it back. Your character, and honestly, that's your credit score, but that's your demonstrating that you're reliable. And then your capital. All right. What you will need to provide to lenders. And so I like to say, put on your lender hat. If you were a lender, what would you want to see from a business so that they can prove, that proof that they're going to pay you back? All right. So, and that their business is reliable. So their business plan, the funding request, proposed collateral, personal finances, legal documents, and then that proof of that you can make a profit. So the last thing that you put into your financial plan is the loan application, and that is specific to the lender. So if you have your financial plan and you are using several different lenders, Like maybe you have a lender for some gap funding that's separate than your financial institution. Those are separate. And you only put the application specific to the lender you are approaching. All right, so now we get to do the fun part, talking about the location and name. So a lot of places, a lot of businesses right now are online, and that's fine. But if you are going to have a storefront, you need to consider your consumer demographics. You need to consider taxes and regulations no matter where you are. You need to consider financial assistance and the cost of living. And then the name. And so you want to consider when you're naming something that that is your foundation and your brand. You want to try to avoid unusual spellings, especially with online these days. People don't want to try to have to spell something oddly. They want to be able to find it easily. And even if you're a physical storefront, there is a number, and I want to say it's in the high 80%, so I'll have to look it up again, but I know it's high, of people that look up a business before they visit it. And so you still want to consider that when you're talking about spellings. You want to make sure you register the entity name, possibly the trademark name, if you're doing it as doing business as, and the domain name. And then I give another resource for finding out more information on that with the SBA. And then we'll go more into considering a good name. This one you have to say out loud to yourself, because when you just read it, it's like, oh, you know, Sam and Ella's. But if you say it really fast, Sam and Ella's Chicken Palace. So not such a great name, depending on if you're going for the laugh or not. Passmore Gas and Propane, we thought that one was funny. This one just struck me as interesting. We actually drove by this one and I was like, I just saw Incision. I didn't see the barbershop underneath there. And I was like, what would a business that would be Incisions even be? But then when we did see that it was a barbershop, my husband and I are like, I don't want to go to somewhere to get my hair cut called Incisions, but that's a personal thing, I guess. We thought this one was cute. Curl Up and Dye Beauty Salon. We're guessing this might be a family name, but either way, it's kind of humorous. I thought this was a good one for a Thai restaurant. And then this was my favorite, just falafels. All right. So we'll go into legal considerations next. Legal structures, sole proprietorship, general partnership, limited liability company, limited liability partnerships, S Corp and C Corp, and nonprofit corp. Those are all different legal structures that you want to consider. When you're talking about business structures, we have some resources. Highly recommend talking to a lawyer and accountant. The Secretary of State website has really good information on the business structures. SBA offers some, and the IRS offers some. So back to our trivia. For sole proprietorships and general partnerships, everything you do as a business can put your personal assets at risk, and that is true. This, I really like the way this shows it. Basically, that LLC is what protects you, your personal assets from your business assets. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but what it shows you is basically the sole proprietorship and the partnership, the difference between that and then moving into the LLC, C Corp, S Corp, and B Corp. That shows that the liability moves from personal liability to the businesses or corporation's liability. And then there's different tax considerations with each one of those. So when you're talking legal considerations, your main consideration is that liability, your level of liability, and you want to consider liability insurance as well. And then your taxes, and that's your income tax and self-employment tax. There are 4 levels of government, and with each one of these levels of government, there are regulations to consider for a business. There are federal, state, county, and then within your city and region. All of them have different regulations that could affect your business. So one example would be federal now has FinCEN that you have to go fill out once you own a small business. So that would be a federal regulation. And then we have legal requirements as well. And then you have to obtain all licenses and permits depending on your business. You have to obtain sales and use tax permits. You need to register for a federal ID, and you need to register for a state ID. All right, so here are some professionals to contact. An SBDC consultant would be my first suggestion, of course. And then CPA or an accountant, a banker, possibly an insurance agent, possibly a real estate agent, and an attorney. All recommended. And then we're going to talk about our launch plan. And so that's once you get it all ready to go, you want to take time to do a launch plan. You want a marketing plan just for your launch. You want to have some promotional materials. You want to have social media and email campaigns. You want to talk to some media outlets if you can, possibly have a ribbon cutting, and then get your local business resources involved, your chambers, your government. All right. And last, I'm going to give you just a bunch of resources. So Find My SBDC will help you find your local SBDC. If you're listening to this, it's more than likely us, the Southwest Minnesota SBDC. Give us a shout out. I'll give you our contact information after this. Grants. So there are people that still want to look for grants. And like I said, there are some. I just strongly recommend that you check and make sure that they're reliable first. And here are a couple resources and some research on it. Next, you want to do research and analysis, and here are some resources. We also at the SBDC have some really great resources for doing market research and analysis. And then a business plan. At the SBDC, we have a business plan template we can provide you. The financial plan, and we like to use scores. Our SBDC consultants have financial plans that they can share with you. They will also help you get through them. And then funding information, and that's SBA has some great funding information and programs on their site. And finally, here is our information. SBDCassistance.com is where you'll find everything about us on our website. Facebook.com. We have a Facebook page. We have a LinkedIn page. We have an Insta too. I have to update that and add that, but feel free to follow us on any of them. If you want to get connected with us, we also do a newsletter on the 15th of the month that shows businesses for sale in the region. So you can give me a call or send me a message and we'll get you connected on that as well. And then I will have the slide deck available. If you reach out to me, you can call me, or if you reach out to Jordan, we can have that available for you. All right. I do see we do have a couple of people on here, just opening it up for questions, or Jordan, if you have anything you want to add or ask as well.
I do. I was just wondering, what are some of the more common pitfalls that or stumbling blocks that people encounter? What do they call that? Growth hacking. How do we do some of that kind of stuff? Find ways around things. What are you seeing that people stumble on?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the fact that when people have assistance, when they reach out to their local community to get assistance, their EDAs and their SBDCs, they are more successful. And otherwise, a lot of people, from what I've seen so far, is they underestimate their worth, especially as a small business. They think if they come in and start cheaper, or they just don't understand that they're worth more, that their time and effort are worth more than they are. And so then they come in and aren't making the financing that they need to make to be able to be solvent. So that would be probably the biggest thing. And then also sometimes the market is already saturated in an area that they want to try to open their business in. And so we have to step back with them and then maybe change the business model a bit and then come back at it again.
Very cool. Other questions? I don't want to be monopolizing Chris's time here.
What kind of time frame would you say people would need to kind of get the ball rolling, allow themselves a couple months or?
Right. So I get that question a lot, and honestly, it totally depends on both the client, the business and the person running the business, and then also, how much they want to push through and how hard they want to work on it. Because we have some people that it takes them a year because they're just doing it on the side when they have time and they might have a lot of other commitments or they just might not be that invested in it. And then we have people that can do it in a matter of about 2 months. So I would say 2 months is probably a good estimate for a smaller business that, from start to finish, if they're really working hard on pushing it through. But that's a fast timeline. So.
Awesome. Other questions? Well, I have one for Chris. And today we talked largely about startup businesses. Does the Small Business Development Center work with existing businesses to improve their operations and maybe if we're having business trouble, turn things around? Is that something you guys do?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We help. If there's anything involved with the business that you can think of, we will assist with it. And if we can't help, we will find you a resource that can. Our consultants, first of all, they have a vast number of years of experience and a vast number of business experience. A lot of them have run their own businesses, plural, and have, really good experience in business. So if they haven't seen it, they'll have a resource that they can help with. But we have people come in that their books just aren't making sense, right? And get us an extra set of eyes on them to see maybe there's the cost of something that they're missing is too high and they're not able to see that. Maybe there's some money that isn't being accounted for and they can back up a little bit and try to figure out where that's coming from. So we can assist with anything like that. Yeah. Or maybe you want to expand, right? And it's time to grow a little. And where do I need to be? I had a client call last week. They never made a business plan. They're fine. They're successful, but they never made a business plan. And they want to see if making a business plan might help them just to be a little more efficient. And so we set them up with a consultant to walk through their business plan and their financials and make sure that, just kind of a health check is actually how they worded it. I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. And we're happy to help with that and assist. And so.
Awesome. Last call for questions, friends. Going once. Going twice. All right. Thank you so much, Chris. One more time, can you run through how folks can get a hold of you and you guys can help at no cost to them?
Yes. So we are at the website sbdcassistance.com. You can call me at 507-537-7386. And then we're happy to assist in any way we can.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much. Chris is with the Small Business Development Center, serving all of southwestern Minnesota. And again, all of her services are at no cost to the clients. So thank you so much. Again, thank you to everybody joining us for Renville County HRA EDA's Lunch and Learn. We do this on a monthly basis. We're going to be taking summer vacation, but we'll be back this fall So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our website is renville.com. How convenient. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.